Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm Kurt, and today we're going to have a look at the A2A Comanche. This is not a sponsored video, and I paid for everything out of my own pocket. So while I may not be as over the top as some of the other reviews out there, I will tell you I love this airplane. If you want a solid idea of what real GA airplanes are like, this is a great add-on. Back in the early 90s, I had access to a Cherokee 250, similar in performance to this Comanche, but in a much more modern package. So getting into this Comanche in Flight Sim was a little bit of a blast from the past. When I first read the description of it on A2A's website, I thought some of the flowery language was going to turn out just to be marketing hype. But it doesn't take much seat time to understand that this plane is actually different from most single-engine add-ons. Normally, when I see an add-on developer using phrases like our AccuSim 2.0 Merlin technology, it causes a hard eye roll from me, and maybe even some muttering words like, yeah, whatever. But after flying it, I think they can call their model whatever they want because it delivers on the hype. There's nothing on this bullet list that's overplayed. Everything they mention here is worthy of mentioning, and it's all very good. The only thing I don't like is the creepy passenger models that for some reason everybody likes to put in their planes lately. I don't like mannequins in my airplane, but they can be disabled, so we'll let that pass. Other devs, make a note of that. Make your creepy zombie passengers optional. It's nice to have a GA plane with an autopilot similar to things I saw in planes that I flew, rather than the G1000 style ones we see in everything now that makes it feel like a tiny, underpowered airliner. This one has limits, lots of them. But if you needed to keep the plane on course for a few minutes so you can dig around in your flight bag for a piece of gum, it can do that. Before we hop in, I want to show you something I did with my Bravo throttle quadrant. I use this setup now for my carbureted GA planes such as this one or the JPLogistics 152, which I've mentioned in other videos, and I'll link in the description below. I've mapped the axis on the far right to carb heat. For now, I use the speed brake handle from the commercial levers pack in that position. Any of you that have flown a plane with carb heat will immediately understand this is a much more natural feeling control than pressing a button. Now I have this lever to pull when operating the engine below normal power. It's there with my other levers and I don't have to hunt for it, much like in a real plane. If you have this throttle quad, give it a try. You won't regret it. Okay, let's hop inside and have a look around. Everything about the Comanche can be configured from the tablet, which can be found in the left-hand map pocket next to your seat. There are a few things that A2A did here that I really like. 1. There isn't some fiddly, irritating click spot to get the tablet out. Just click on the tablet. Similarly, there's no fiddly little click spot to put it back away. Just click on the power button and it goes away. 2. It doesn't have a silly simulated tablet battery that runs down just to be an annoyance. A2A was nice enough to assume that you're smart enough to have some kind of USB power to keep it running. Thank you, A2A. It doesn't have a silly suction cup mount that you can't move. You can hang the tablet anywhere you like it by grabbing the bezel and dragging. You can move it closer and further away from your face with the mouse wheel on the bezel also, but you have to be kind of careful with this because sometimes Microsoft Flight Simulator wants to zoom your whole view in and out. Every other add-on dev needs to adopt these kind of rules for tablets. It should add to the flight, not provide an extra nuisance and headache. Okay, kids, so optional zombie passengers and better tablets like A2A does it. Thanks. The tablet opens to this custom homepage with your registration number from the livery options, and yes, you can use custom registry numbers. Other than that, this page does nothing, so I don't know why they bother to have a tab for it. It could just be a boot screen and then go away. But it doesn't really harm anything, so I guess it doesn't matter. The Flight Info tab gives you a great little weather widget showing wind, temperatures, barometer, visibility, all in a really tidy and intuitive view, and displayed in your preferred units of measure. The bottom half of the page has 3 tabs. 2 are for checklists, 1 normal checklist and the others for emergencies, which you might need since the package models wear and tear and failures. The tab open by default is the aircraft tab, and it has estimations, which are live data and update in near real time. For instance, endurance is real and based on your current fuel and conditions. Next to that is the cabin temperature, which shows temperature, and a little passenger icon, which is color-coded to indicate cold, comfortable, and hot. You can, of course, adjust the climate controls to get that where you want it. And at the bottom, it displays recommended speeds and power settings for various phases of flight. Pretty handy to have at a glance. Speeds are shown in miles per hour, as is common on older aircraft. The airspeed indicator shows miles per hour in the outer, larger ring of numbers and knots on the inner ring. While different from more modern planes, it doesn't much matter since all the book numbers are going to be in miles per hour anyhow. On the Controls tab, you can set your preferred avionics options and many other settings as well. Some of these duplicate switch functions, so are just there for convenience if you cannot locate a switch. However, in the right-hand column are most of the ones you'll be messing with before and after your flight, such as removing tie-downs, chocks, control locks, pitot covers. The doors can be controlled from here also. The headphone switch emulates wearing good headsets in the plane, canceling out a lot of the harsh engine noise. The big T in the middle gets you out with the tow bar to move the plane around if you need to. And on the left, the arrows and spot switches are for the little floodlight mounted behind the seats up on the roof. Autopilot controls are in here as well, handy if you lose track of what mode you've got yourself in. And then all the realism options are at the bottom. Clicking the yellow advanced options brings up lots of other things that you can set to your liking. The fuel and payload page is another big win. Again, the numbers on the right side of this page are in real time and reflect the current state of the plane. On the upper left, you can switch between metric or imperial units of measure. In the left column, you can click on each seat to add a passenger there. Plus and minus tabs appear so you can adjust the weight to your liking. Same thing with the baggage area. You can long click on the tabs to move in tens of units. The same basic concept at the bottom with the fuel tanks. There are also light, medium, and heavy fuel presets if you don't want to set a specific value. And you can send the current fuel info to the engine monitor from here if you don't care to learn how to do it on the dashboard. Center of gravity information is also shown on this page and updates in real time. The maintenance page. This page has a lot going on. At the top is the current aircraft information, including live airframe and engine time. The airframe tab provides an inspection option, so I can see how the airplane is withstanding all of my bad landings. Below that are various options that people might invest in on their real airplane to improve comfort, speed, and efficiency. You can also select between the Macaulay or the MT propeller. The overhaul options are used to bring things up to date as the lifespan of the plane evolves. And at the bottom, you can set the initial state for your new plane, basically brand new, purchased used, or purchased at auction. You'll want your mechanic to inspect to find any surprises that the last owner left for you. The engine tab shows all the lovely stuff that can go wrong with your plane. And the inspect tab brings your A&P mechanic over to find all the surprises. Elements light up in color to indicate their various levels of wear. You need to stay on top of oil consumption, and this slider will do that. And it's also to your advantage to run the correct oil and maybe additives for your operating environment. Setting this up wrong can increase wear. You can select and maintain spark plugs and wires here. Information on why you might want one or the other can be found in the manual, which you can find in the Comanches folder. That'll be inside your community folder, and then within the Comanche folder, you'll find it under documents. The overhaul button performs a rebuild when necessary. The Engine Analyzer tab will show you lots of real-time specifics about the engine. You can spot foul plugs, bad mixture settings, and developing problems. There's a lot to this little page, and it's all in the manual if you want to check it out. The Electrical System tab shows the basic relationship and operation of your electrical system, battery, alternators, loads. It also gives you access to your battery charger if needed. There's also an instant recharge available, but I don't remember where I found that. It might have been an overhaul. As long as you take care to operate everything properly and don't log out with your master switch on, you really shouldn't need that. The walk-around tab takes you around to each activity in the real walk-around and includes many interactive parts along the way, including the ability to sump fuel, check for water, and to have a look at your oil level, the color of the oil to see if it's in good shape, and lots of other cool things to check out. Okay, since we went through all of what the gauges do in a round gauged airplane when I did the 152 video, I'm not going to repeat it here, but there's a link above and in the description if you're very new and you need to know about that. It's all the same in this plane as are the basics of the dash layout. Starting the A2A Comanche should be done by the checklist since the add-on does model failures and wear and tear, and you're more likely to do something wrong if you're not doing the proper procedures to get it going. Yet another way A2A makes this kind of an ownership simulator and not just a flight simulator. It's pretty cool, I think. A couple of differences with this plane, moving up from the 152, is we're adding a prop pitch lever, the blue one, and manual flaps, which is this lever here. It works a bit like a parking brake in older cars. You pull the lever back, and it has stops for each flap position. To go back to flaps up, or to reduce flaps by a notch, you'd push the little button on the end of the lever and then ease it forward. This is one of my favorite things about the old Pipers. It's a very tactile process in the real plane, and it just feels very piloty when you're doing it. Kind of like hand cranking the landing gear in an old Warbird. Speaking of hand cranks, this one on the ceiling is your pitch trim. But since it's flight sim, you'll probably just have that mapped to your stick or yoke like any other plane, and you don't get the fun of using that either. As long as we're looking at the overhead, up here you also have the white switch, which is your dome light. which you might use on the ground while loading up, but probably not often while you're in flight. The red switch is your red floodlight. That one you would use at night to illuminate the dash. And there's another white light to illuminate the back of the cabin. And this little adjustable light that I mentioned earlier when we were talking about the tablet. It's adjustable with the mouse, but rather hard to get pointed where you want it, and that's why the controls are in the tablet. The cabin door is functional, and in standard Piper fashion, it's a two-part process. You undo the upper latch, and then the lower latch releases the door to open. On the floor between the seats, you can find the fuel cutoffs. Be aware that the handle serves as your pointer. The side the handle is on is what's selected. So when both handles are pointing forward, the fuel valve is open. And when it's facing back, it is off. Each side position is your tip tanks. Typically, you'd only fill the tip tanks if they were required for extra range. And if they are filled, you would use those tanks first and then switch to your main tanks. There's a manual gear extension lever on the floor. I haven't played with it, but I assume much like in a real plane, you'd ratchet that until the gear showed down and locked, if for some reason the normal system wasn't working. You also get this spiffy bungee cord in the map pocket, which serves as your control lock. Don't laugh, a lot of old planes use this same fancy lock in the real world. The only other things in here that are a little different are this little rheostat dimmer for the navs and instrument lights. Your breakers are under the control switches down here. Not a big deal in the real plane as you just run your hand along there to feel for popped breakers, but a little less fun in flight sim. And your climate controls are under the left yoke. As we saw in the tablet earlier, you can monitor the cabin temperature, and here's where you'd make those adjustments. And as a final oddity, the ashtrays function, but the cigarette lighter does not. And let me tell you, as a former smoker who once lit a cigarette at 8,000 feet in a single-engine plane, best not to smoke at high altitude while you're trying to be a pilot. There's a reason we don't do this anymore. Anyhow, let's fire this thing up and go for a ride. Okay, before engines start, pre-flight walk around. You may or may not have done that. Passenger brief and seat belts. We can't really do those two in the simulator. Control lock removed. Parking brake set. Gear switch down. Flaps up. Radios off. Autopilot master off. Avionics off. All electrical off. Breakers in. Beacon on. Engine start. Fuel selectors set to desired tank. That'll be mains for us. Mixture rich. Throttle crack. Prop full forward. Carb heat off. Master switch on. Fuel pump on. Fuel pressure check. Fuel pump off. Primer 1 to 5 strokes. We'll do 5. Mags both. Prop area clear. This is where you shout down the hall, clear prop, and scare the heck out of your wife. Starter engage. Oil pressure check. And it's not on this checklist, but typically we set the engine RPM to about 1,000 RPM for idle. Mixture, lean as required. I originally ran through all of the checklists all the way out to the runway, but I decided that's a waste of everybody's time because we're here to review the plane, not run through checklists. However, a couple of important items here in the pre-taxi checklist. Actually, one was the heading indicator card. So I left that bit in here, and we'll get that out of the way, and we'll get this thing rolled out and go for a ride. Heading indicator. This is a hot one with this airplane. The gyro drift on this guy is real, so what you want to do is check your mag, and it looks like we're about 157-ish there, and we want to dial that in. You push this knob in, and that'll rotate the compass card. About 157. Always, this is one of those important checklist items. It will always be wrong in this airplane, and if you take off with it set wrong, you're going to be an unhappy camper. Another thing that'll make you an unhappy camper is forgetting to unpush that button. You push it again, it pops back out. If you forget to do that, when you go to adjust your heading, you're going to adjust your compass card instead, and that's bad too. So make sure you pop that guy back out. I forgot to do it here. And parking brakes, release. And we tap the brakes to test on the initial roll, which we'll do here in a second. And they're good. You're going to notice that the Comanche has kind of a fast taxi speed. My memory with most general aviation planes is that this is more like how they really are, not the way the Microsoft ones are where you have to carry power to keep them moving. Once they're rolling, they just skate right along. When applying the parking brake, if you have it in realism mode, you have to press the toe brakes first and then apply the parking brake, otherwise it will not work. And that, again, is the way the real airplane is. And again, to keep things moving, I'm going to skip over the run-up checklist here, but one of the things you should know about this add-on is that you want to do this checklist when you're flying. Since it's modeling wear and tear and it's modeling failure things, you need to make sure you check everything just like you would in the real plane to avoid having failures immediately after takeoff or during your takeoff roll or whatever. So I am going through that here in the background, but I'm not gonna show the whole thing. Just follow the checklist, do what it says, and you'll be on your way. Okay, so the prop is fully forward. We go to full throttle at this point. Bring the throttle up kind of slowly. We don't want to over rev the constant speed prop. So what I usually do is bring it up about halfway, wait till I see the RPM get where I want it, and then push it the rest of the way in. Verifying the engine instruments stay in the green on the roll, and we're looking for 85 knots for rotation. And positive rate of climb, gear up. And we're aiming for about 105 miles per hour on the climb out. I might have said knots before. I'm used to airplanes that are knots. Once you got about 1,000 feet AGL, you can pull the throttle back a little bit and get pull the RPM back a little bit. No reason to be firewalling it the whole way up. And you want to set your climb power basically so that you're not seeing overheating cylinder heads on that engine monitor in the center of the dash there. It'll tell you if one of your cylinder heads is getting a little hot. If it is, you can just back off. So just kind of generally talking about the flight characteristics of the plane, I think it's great. This is one of the best flying general aviation planes I've ever done in Flight Simulator. Absolutely no complaints. Everything it does is believable. The glide rates, the climb, everything is more or less as you would expect it to be. Like I said, I have some previous experience with 250 horsepower Cherokees, not Comanches, but again, same size airplane, same power, very similar performance. I mean, really, there's nothing bad to say about the handling of this plane in Flight Sim. It's great. Next thing we're going to talk about here is the autopilot, which is a little different system than you're probably used to from most of the other airplanes you run into in this flight simulator. The autopilot is all housed in the turn coordinator. Turning the autopilot master on illuminates all the lights momentarily as a test, and once they go out and the green ready light appears, it's good to go. Pressing the mode button cycles through the modes. ST is stabilizer, it's a wings leveling mode. HD is heading hold. Low and high are both used for VOR or GPS course tracking. Low is used mostly for weak VOR signals, and high is full authority used for high precision courses. So in effect, heading mode will track your heading bug, whatever you have it set to, as I've got it right now. Low and high will track your course needle. however you have that set up. So if your input is from the GPS, it's going to base it on the GPS. Tracking a GPS course, you need to get the airplane roughly on that course and then engage it, and it'll track it just fine from there. All the instructions can be found in the documentation, which has a separate document just for the autopilot. For altitude hold, you'll hit the altitude engage disengage button, which can be found there underneath where the yoke would be if it was visible, or if you have the yoke visible, it shows up on there as well. That'll cause the blue light to illuminate on the left side of the turn coordinator. The way it works is it will just hold the pressure altitude you were at the time when you press the button, so there's no way to dial it up or down. If your trim is too far out of whack for the altitude you're trying to hold, the lights on the right-hand side of the turn coordinator will illuminate to tell you to move the trim up or down, and that's just to assist the servo motor to track the altitude you've asked for. So you don't need to trim it extremely precisely, it's just asking for some help. Once you get it set, that light will extinguish and it should hold your altitude just fine from there. To change altitude, you'll disconnect the altitude hold, fly to the new altitude you want, and re-engage it once you're there. And we'll finish this one up landing at Santa Barbara on 15 right, a favorite of mine. Approach is flown at about 120 miles per hour and touchdowns at around 90. Like all Pipers, it's rock solid in approach and makes anyone look like a pro. So just to cover all the bases, this is a fantastic add-on. It's a little expensive compared to the other piston singles, but it's also better than the others, honestly. If you're looking for a great simulation of a piston single, get this one. I can't say enough about it. Having a fast, realistic GA plane in flight sim has really made it more fun for me. Finally, I have a plane that's relatively simple to operate, has state saving, has failures and wear, and can be used for realistic burger flights or even vacation cross countries. The sound, which I didn't talk much about, is great too. The only thing I can think of that really compares in that area is the FlySimware Cessna 414. Anyhow, that's about all for today. I hope you've enjoyed this, and if you have, I hope you'll consider subscribing, and I'll catch all of you in the next one. Thanks for watching.